Welcome to Track Changes On. I'm Caroline Warnes. I've spent more than 20 years working in media, corporate communications, brand, and content strategy, watching how work is changing from the inside. So every week I'm going to explore one topic that's reshaping work and what it means for you as well. So let's get into it. This week, for the first episode, we're looking at a topic that's on the top of everyone's minds at the moment. It's trust and why we as employees might be losing trust in the companies we work for. A couple of months ago, I posted a short reel on Instagram about trust at work and why it seemed to be disappearing. Once I posted it, I closed the app and to be honest, I didn't really think much more about it again. When I came back later that day to check in, it had started taking off and it kept going really. So fast forward a couple of months and it's been viewed almost 300,000 times. More than 12,000 people have liked it. And chances are if we've connected through Instagram, you might be one of those people. Every single day, people are still adding comments to that humble little reel. And I've got to admit, that kind of surprised me. I mean, trust wasn't the topic I expected people to connect with so deeply out of everything that I post about. To me, it seems like a bit of a nebulous concept. I mean, most people today seem to be looking for really practical information about side hustles and reshaping their careers. This reel really did neither of those things. It was just pure speculation about, where trust might be going. Then I started looking at some of the comments and I realised that this had tapped into a really deep and specific psychological type of pain that lots of you are feeling right now. So I've got some of them here. Let me read some of them to you right now. So Ruby Tilly and Human said, this really resonated with me. I've been in corporate for 25 years. It's always been tough and I've worked hard, but lately I'm seeing an absence of humanity, strategy decisions which feel like they've been made by spinning the wheel and yearly restructures. Lyndall said, I think when you've worked for a company for many years and they've proven time and time again that people first only happens when it's expedient to do so, that can be tough. When it's expedient to push people out and minimise the costs, then people first goes out the window. And then Brooke said, why would current employees trust anything? Last week, a manager lied right to my face and 4 hours later, I got the news from a different manager I was taking a pay cut. Like the extra work I did for a year meant absolutely zero. Why did I even bother trying? So the thing is, I'm in Australia, as you probably know from the accent, but these are comments from all around the world, from lots from the US, but really all parts of the globe seem to be experiencing the same thing right now. And that thing really is something fundamental has changed in the relationship between companies and employees. Now, I'm not the only one who is saying this, but I'm honestly yet to see a really good explanation of why this is happening right now. So I went digging. So here are some numbers I turned up that you might want to think about. I've shared the data from research firm Gallup before, but here it is again, just in case you've missed it. So they measure employee experience across the world, and they've found pretty conclusively that engagement has been steadily increasing from about 2000 to 2022, so, the last 2 decades. And then it took a pretty sharp turn at that point and has been falling ever since. So 2022 to 2026, we've all been kind of shutting off a little bit at work. I've shared some thoughts previously on why I think this is happening. I think it's probably a mix of hiring and growth strategies slowing down in the economy. So, companies actually don't have to work to find good talent anymore because they're not out looking for it. I think also the introduction of AI has impacted people's perception of their value at work. I know that's been the case for me as a writer. But here's the interesting thing. There's another pretty well-cited study that shows something a little different. So some of you might have heard of Edelman's Trust Barometer. So they're a global PR firm, but they do a pretty reputable study every year on measuring public trust in 4 core parts of society. So business, government, media, and also NGOs. So this year's results, which were released sort of at the start of the year, show us something a little different. And that is that employees still trust their employers more than every other institution I just mentioned. So we trust our employers more than media, more than government, and more than not-for-profits as well. So in fact, that level of trust has actually been increasing a little over the last few years. So at first when I was thinking about it, these 2 findings didn't really make sense to me. I mean, if people still trust their employers, as the Edelman research is telling us, why are they disengaging as we're seeing in Gallup? And, why also does my content on social media that talks about trust and our relationship with our employers deteriorating, why does it always result in such a strong reaction from people who are going, oh yeah, that's me, I understand it, I can see myself in that? I think the answer to this is we're talking about 2 different types of trust. The first type of trust is what I'd call institutional trust. So that's the type of trust that Edelman is talking about. It's the belief that your organisation is fundamentally a good organisation. So it treats customers fairly. It generally behaves ethically in the big wide world. It's not grossly corrupt, all that sort of stuff. So what the evidence is telling us is that people still generally believe that's true about the companies they work for. Now, the second type of trust is something much more personal, and I think this is what's being measured when we talk about engagement at work falling over the last few years. It's the trust that exists inside your relationship with your employer. So it's when you start thinking about, will my contribution be recognised? Will promises that are made to me be kept? You know, if I invest my energy and loyalty in this company, will that investment come back to me? Organisational psychologists actually have a term for this. They call it the psychological contract, and that's the unwritten set of expectations that sits alongside your employment contract. And lots of people like to downplay this, but it's actually important, and it matters just as much as anything else you've got in writing, and that's where trust is created. The evidence tells us this is really what's been suffering over the last 3 or 4 years. So here's what I think is the biggest source of conflict in the employee experience right now. When times are good, like they have been in, probably earlier in the decade, these two types of trust sit really well with each other. We believe our company is doing the right thing, and we also believe our company is looking after us. Those two things are aligned. That's actually not what we have at the moment. So employees think that their company is capable of doing the right thing externally, but potentially not nurturing them and looking after them in the same way they were 5 years ago. I mean, perhaps you're seeing this, perhaps your company is winning awards and celebrating shareholder value and customer commitment, yet you're not feeling any of that love as an employee. Actually, maybe you've probably been through restructure after restructure. Maybe your salary hasn't moved for several years, or maybe you're in the midst of a hiring freeze and picking up all the extra work from people who have left the company. What this adds up to is a really difficult tension to live with psychologically. It's like my employer is capable of being a great operator, and I see that, but just not with me. So I've spoken a little bit about this before. This is actually called sense making. When these two realities don't line up, you spend a lot of emotional and mental energy actually just trying to work out what's going on. So you start thinking things like, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe my company leadership knows something I don't know. Maybe this is just a difficult period. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe my grasp on reality isn't what I thought it was, at a very extreme take on things. So that process of trying to make sense of two conflicting experiences is actually what we would call invisible work. It's a lot of cognitive load. It doesn't appear in your job description, and you're not going to be talking about it at your annual performance review, but it still consumes a lot of your energy and time. And I've said this before and I'll say it again, I think this is one of the big contributors to burnout as well. We're seeing, 74% of employees, 3/4 of employees saying they've experienced burnout right now. That number is incredibly high and suggests a systemic problem rather than something to do with individual resilience. So what is actually happening here? So when you feel that the unwritten expectations of the relationship have been broken, it's called a psychological contract breach. I think that's what many of the comments on my Instagram video were actually describing. You weren't necessarily saying my employer is untrustworthy or unethical. What you were saying was, I can't reconcile the organisation I believe you are with the organisation I'm experiencing. So what can you do about it? Well, if any of this has resonated with you, I'd encourage you to really pay attention to where your energy is going at work on a daily and weekly basis. Is it the work itself exhausting you, or are you actually spending a lot of energy trying to make sense of what's going on at work, of the conflicting messages and signals that you're seeing? Those aren't the same thing, and they have different paths to resolution. Now, if this episode sparks something for you, I've explored the idea in more depth in this week's companion article on Track Changes On. Whether you're listening here on Substack or through your favourite podcast app, you can find the full piece in the publication. Thanks for spending part of your day with me. Until next time, take care.